I'm Keith Dunkinson, I'm a Corvette enthusiast. I'm here with the Corvette Club. It's the 70th anniversary of the Corvettes this year, so 1953 through 2023. And we have 8 generations of Corvette on display at the club stand. Generation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if we start with the ones, there's a 1957 Generation 1 Corvette here. Hard to imagine it's a 1957 car. It's got a beautiful red and white colour theme that flows from the inside through to the outside. There's lots of fabulous little details on the car. If you want to get air cooling on the car, you need to lift the metal flap here, and that will flow some cool air through in to cool the occupants down in the Florida sunshine. There's lovely V8 block in there to bring the car to about 7.4 seconds to 60 miles an hour. This car does a lot of mileage. It's owned by Bob, and you'll see him at Carfest and lots of different shows around the place. One of the nicest details on this one, if you have a look at the back, is the exhaust just put out the bumpers in there. Actually, let's say lovely detail on the car. And moving on to the Generation 2 cars that followed quite shortly, you see, you know, this is a slightly more angular car, a little bit less rounded. It's got an amazing dashboard. They've got lots of effort into the dashboard. This is the manual Corvette, and most of the generations have had both manual and automatic versions. It's only in the most recent version, the Generation 8, where there's no manuals available. It's got pop-up headlights. You see the Corvette emblem here with the flag out either side. That's always been the Corvette emblem for 70 years. You'll see that on every car. If you have a look in the detail in the cars, most cars have got that in 20 or 25 places, embedded in the headlights, and the dashboard, and the gear sticks, and that infamous logo. Through these 1s and 2s, very few of them came to the UK in the early days. Over 30-40 years, collectors have started to bring the cars in as imports, but back in the 50s and 60s there were almost none of these cars here. The first car that we started to see really in the UK is the Generation 3, the Corvette C3. Probably one of the best known Corvettes with its very angular shape. These were first produced in the 60s and produced right through to the very, very early 80s. I think there's about 14 years of Corvette production on the C3. So there's early model C3s, late model C3s, convertibles, Targas. Again, you know, quite an interesting dashboard. This was the days of the emissions, so although it's got a huge engine with a 427 big block engine in it, you know, some of the Generation 3 cars were slower than some of the Generation 1 cars. But the styling was, you know, I call them Boogie Bear cars from Starsky and Hutch, but absolutely out there styling. And you quite often see these in really interesting loud colour schemes. There's a lovely orange and black on the other stand. Moving up here to the Generation 4 Corvette, this was very, very new in its day.
What year are we talking about now?
The 4s came in the early 80s. And they started off using the engine out of the C3s, the late Crossfire engine. We very soon moved to the C4 350, which is a 5.7 litre V8, which is used in many GM cars for many years. Very long-standing engine. This is a ZR1 edition, so it's a very, very special edition of car. It's 4.5 seconds to 60 on a 1991 car. So it was ahead of its time in terms of engine performance. Handling was not quite up there with the European cars of the day, but it had electric seats and air conditioning and adjustable steering wheel, anti-lock brakes. It had, you know, features, you know, very much on a par with European cars. This is a Targa top. You can pull the top out and store it in the boot, and the back lifts. The window lifts like that to get into the boot for access and storage. Steel chassis with DRP panels. The fuel flap is located under there. You lift that up to get to the fuel flap. And they produced the C4 again, was a long-running car which had some nice special editions. Moved on to the C5 in the mid-90s. The cars are much smoother, more rounded look, less angular, more aerodynamic. always been quite big cars, but as they get through the generations, they seem to get bigger, longer, and wider, and that makes them very comfortable cars on the road. Some of the interior features, like the back and the flag, fabulous to look at. Some of the forward-looking shots can look a little bit, mid-90s Japanese on some of these cars. But the styling of the car and the size of the engine, they started to bring in new technologies like traction control into these Generation 5 cars. And you see there's a steady progression of technology as you move on through. The next car is the 6, it's having a different shape of the front. The next generation of technology starts to get into better braking systems, more electronics. Spacious car. These were 90s cars. The Generation 6, perhaps not a huge move from the Generation 5 car. They covered a lot of years of production. But then we moved on, I think it was 2014, into the Generation 7 cars, and the yellow car there pushed back to be very, very special. This is one of one car. This is a 650 horsepower supercharged V8. It's a Z06, which you know is a very special edition of the Corvette. Two Corvette ZR1, Z06, they're the most special editions. This is 200 horsepower more than the standard car. It's 190 miles an hour and 3 seconds to 60. It's got fabulous traction control and aids. It's the last of the Corvettes with a front engine, because as we move off this into the next, this is in C8 Racing Co, so Corvette Team Racing colours. That's what this solid yellow is all about. As we move off the Generation 7 into the Generation 8, this is the 2022 car, this is my car. The engine's moved to the middle, so now it's a mid-engine car. This is 3 seconds to 60, actually 2.8 seconds in the US, 187 miles an hour. Mid-engine, 8-speed gearbox, an electronic limited slip differential, magnetic suspension, heads-up display, hydraulic front lift on the suspension. Very, very modern car, all aluminium frame and GRP panels, 1,600 kilograms of weight, and now it's been 7,500 miles on this one, and now we're waiting for the Generation 9 to see what comes next. I think it's very interesting to look at 70 years of development between the Generation Corvette and the Generation 8 Corvette and the Generation 1 Corvette. They're both faithful to certain themes, but they're both extraordinary. Corvette always built their own cars in Bowling Green, a little bit like Lotus at Hethel. The only thing they build is Corvettes, and they're so passionate about the products. You can see it in all the details, those exhausts coming out of the fenders, the way they've kept the same badge through 70 years of production. They always try to do special little features on the petrol filler packs and the gear knobs. You see that little flag on this car. I imagine you see it 20-25 times if you look very closely, and you've got to see where they all are. You've seen the Bob Leone, you can do the hood on this in 25 seconds. I've sat behind him at the traffic lights watching him do that, and it's 14 seconds on my electric convertible on the C8. I love the colour flow on the Generation 1 and the Generation 8 there, where the reds and the whites on the exterior are matched with the interior, the same on mine. The detail in the design of the car, absolutely fabulous. Even white wall tyres look good on this.